Today I want to discuss something that I've done a couple of videos on this on YouTube myself a couple times, highlighting why I've switched from Android to iOS or iOS to Android. I flip-flop sometimes, but I think that this may be the last time I flip-flop, unless Apple is willing to change the hell out of their operating system. I'm not going back. So I actually had an iPhone 6s Plus, and unfortunately the problem with the 6s Plus was that A, it was really buggy, B, something that was really annoying, that happens to all phones, mind you, so this really has nothing to do with it, is that the charging port underneath was extremely loose. You had to plug it in a certain way, so I will be more careful at the way I plug it in the phone. However, I have to say that I've switched right now temporarily to a budget Android phone, and this is temporary. I'm going to save up for a probably OnePlus 3T, which is somewhat above a budget phone. It's more or less in the $400 range, whereas this is half of that. So let's talk about this. Why did I switch from one to the other? And let's just discuss this. iOS and Android are both very buggy operating systems, but iOS more so than ever. It really doesn't work the way it's supposed to work, especially when it has lower power, and it works like crap. It has a lot of bug issues where you go ahead and try to open things up, and it'll crash, or it will freeze, or something will happen. Now, granted, this was during its low power mode that these issues really predominantly were featured, but this happened to me when it was at like 40 or 50% of its battery life, which shouldn't happen, where your phone ceases to work in order to do what you need to do. So that was the first thing that kind of upset me, was the fact that my phone just keeps freezing, crashing. I get the updates, I run the updates, it makes it slower. And in general, I've noticed that with Apple devices, they purposely cripple their devices. I have a Nexus 2013, a Nexus 7, and I have to say the thing's working just as fast about as when I got it back in 2013. That's pretty damn good, and it's on, I think, the last version it's allowed is Marshmallow, and yeah, I mean, it's either Marshmallow or whatever Android L was. But yeah, it didn't have any issues. Oh, Lollipop was Android L. So it didn't really have any issues. I still don't have issues. I still use it to this day as a tablet, as a general tablet to let me get my job done. So we'll start there. Now take it to another extreme. I've got an iPad 3, and the thing it's the Retina display, and with the updates and everything, the thing does not work as nearly as well as it did when you first got the device. The device wasn't slow. The device wasn't laggy. The device wasn't slow to go and load web pages, and now it is. It's extremely slow. It's extremely buggy, and I think Apple does this purposely. I really think they downgrade the device when you run through updates. And now there's going to be an iPhone 8 out, and you watch the 6s Plus, and the 6 will just continuously get really slow. So they do that to make a profit, and that's one of the other reasons why I'm I don't want to say I'm completely done with iPhones, because never say never on anything, but I will say this, that's a good reason too, is that their software is just not really well optimized. They just slow it down. Another reason that I'm kind of done with it is the fact that, okay, this is a $200 phone. This is a $200 phone, the Moto G4. It's not the G5. Actually, it was cheaper than that. I shouldn't even say that. It was $190 total. I mean, and the thing is that it operates smoother than my iPhone 6s Plus, which is, what, a year old at this point? So, yeah, that's annoying. Granted, it doesn't have the nice fingerprint reader, it doesn't have NFC, but, I mean, come on, this cheap little device can actually work a lot better. And iOS is just, in my opinion, hasn't really advanced that far compared to Android. in terms of what you can do. For example, I can tell Google to open up anything that I want to in the car without having any issues. I mean, you could try to say, hey Siri, sorry if I activated it, open up this. But I hate to say it, but Hey Siri doesn't work as well as OK Google. All right, don't do that. So, it just won't, it doesn't respond as well. This really responds well and is very seamless in terms of opening things, in terms of going back and forth. You can tell it to dim the display. I didn't even know this, and I wanted to do this last night when I was driving home, and I could get the display dimmed. There was no issues with it doing any settings or turning on or off Wi-Fi and everything. I could tell it to play music that I wanted it to play, and it would play with whatever player that I wanted it to play. It didn't have to be a Google Play account. It was able to run it right off of Spotify. So Apple, when you tell it you want to play it something, it either looks in your music library or it only looks at Apple's iCloud. Apple Music, which doesn't really help us that much, because what if we don't subscribe to that? Apple is about brand name, and Apple seems to be forcing Apple users to use whatever the word Apple, whatever things that are associated with Apple, including their music services. So if you want to go on that bandwagon and pay, I'd rather not. I think that it's a little bit of a monopoly, honestly, and they shouldn't exactly be forcing you to use one service over the other. It's kind of what happened with Internet Explorer back in the old days when Microsoft forced you to use Internet Explorer over any other browser or not give you the option. They didn't really force you, but they just didn't give you the option of not using it. This device, although I'm sure the camera isn't as good as the iPhones, this is I think it's a 12 megapixel camera. It's either 12 or 16. And I haven't really run its paces in terms of the camera, but battery life, it's not bad so far. I'm not having any issues with it. I want to see how this is. This is a 3,000 milliamp battery, but this is a device that is a year old at this point. They've got the Moto G5, but I went with the G4 because, to be honest, with price. Looking for a budget phone that will last me, maybe just a couple months, 6 months. And in all honesty, I could see this lasting me longer than that. It just operates the way it's supposed to. I don't have any issues with this brand, Motorola, because they keep kind of a stock, clean Android feel to it. Lenovo bought them out, but this is actually a halfway decent device. What else can I say about this that I think is just better than iOS? I think the integration within itself is better. Apps are able to tightly integrate with other apps if they wanted to. For example, when I opened up Waze, I actually was able to see that Spotify I could actually select my music on Spotify while I was on Waze. It integrated it directly into the app, which was quite nice. Google Android, in terms of the car, they have a car app. I can use the car app and it would switch the interface out completely. You can run any application you want to from here. Even, a lot of them need to be rooted, but that's a different subject on its own. But you can SSH into things. I can do more of my job for other things. I originally wanted to leave Android. A lot of it came down to some of the battery life. I'm going to run a test run today and let everyone know of the update, probably in a couple days, on how well I've done with the battery life on my Switch. However, I'm not missing iOS. I can switch back and forth with an instant, although I'm finding that now this is more, I'm going to miss more of the features if I ever switch back to iOS. I'm going to miss the ability to tell my phone what I want it to do, and it can ask me whatever I want it to do with, in terms of what app I want to use. In terms of simplicity, one thing I got to give iOS is that it's simple. It's really, really simple. So for people who never picked up a smartphone before, you can pick up an iPhone and be fine. Whereas if you're choosing Android, you're more or less a power user. Not all people are power users, obviously, but this gives you the ability to say what you want to do. You can have a default browser in Android, whereas you can't in iOS. It's stuck with Safari, and that's it. Google has pretty much kept this open as much as it wants to, and in all honesty, it just makes for a better experience. This operating system has just blown away iOS in terms of functionality. I hate to say it, but I can customize the hell out of this thing. But even I prefer to have stock Android because it's very smooth, it's very fast, and that's why I went with this. By the way, stay away. My general advice is this: stay the hell away from Samsung. It's not worth the money. I wouldn't buy a Samsung device. I would never ever buy one ever again. I bought the Note 4, and the thing was cool at first, but it was very laggy. It didn't do everything, and they had other services that Google already had, so they kind of replaced it. And in my opinion, Samsung's Android is different. It's a completely different flavor of Android that I never want to touch again. I know this is a bit of a rant, going back and forth on little things, but I think it makes sense for what I do to have an Android device. It's just the ability to actively manage and monitor and do what you need to do on a device that actually is decent. Android phones have come a long way. I really got into Android, I want to say around the days when we had the Nexus 4, if that sounds right. I think that was my first Android experience when we first joined onto T-Mobile years ago. And it's come a long way. Even then, back then, it was more powerful than iOS is today. I really, really hate to say this. Apple needs to do something different in order to get power users back. Apple really should consider making a pro version of their software that actually appeals to pros, including Macs, including iPhones, including iPads, because that's what we pros like. We don't like to live in an ecosystem where we're forced to draw out what we need and have to use your product for everything we want. We're pro. We don't care what we use. We just want it to work, and we want it to work well. It's been a very interesting ride with the Apple devices. I think the Apple Watch wasn't as much of a flop as I thought it was going to be, and it at least provides some information, and that's where it beats Android, I think. Other than that, I'm sorry, but I don't think I'm going to miss iOS. Alright, if you guys think that I should ever switch back to iOS, I'd like to know why. What makes you like iOS? Everything that I've seen so far, I don't need iOS to live and do what I need to do. I'm very comfortable with using Android, and there's so many applications that can integrate with PCs and Macs for Android. I don't miss it. I know that some people like the seamlessness between Apple and Apple's products, but quite frankly, at this point, yeah, I'm done. So, anyways, let me know what you guys think of this video in the comments below. If you like to give it a thumbs up, if you dislike to give it a thumbs down, and stay tuned for more videos. I look forward to doing more videos very soon. I've got a nice lineup of things, but this is going to just be kind of the intro that I've switched over to Android and why I've switched back to Android for hopefully the final time. Alright, thank you guys very much, and stay tuned for more.